You know, I've said before on this show, the class doesn't fix race and race doesn't fix lineage. But the thing about it, you can't even get to lineage because they won't even let you start having a conversation about race where you can drill down race to get to lineage. He's telling you, listen, Cornell West says, listen, I'm a black man from here. I'm with my parents. This is part of my life. He's saying, cut out that part of your life. That part of your life should not have meaning in terms of running for president. Wait a minute. We did not promise you to murder a part of ourselves that cries out for justice. Like, we did not say that that was going to be the thing that we were going to run on, that anybody was going to run on. Cornel West never told nobody that I was going to cut out my blackness or cut off my ADOSness so that you white folks could feel comfortable. But that is what the white liberal and white lefts demand. You have to cut off your needs, your ability to live in this country for what we need. That's what they did with student loans. Well, y'all don't y'all have loans too? It don't make no sense how y'all act. Don't y'all have stuff? No, we're saying, so you're saying in order to win, and this has always been the leftist, this has always been the cry from liberals and leftists alike. Remember when we started talking about reparations and we mainstreamed it? The first people to come out and try to kill it was Jacobin. The first people weren't liberals, they were leftists to come out and say, we're going. Then you had MSNBC liberals and Joy Reid and everybody come out and smear us. Liberals and leftists love to join forces when it comes to race. They love it. They don't love nothing more than to join forces. And they have this thing. So who said, like, well, if you're going to be a third-party candidate, what third-party candidates have got to do, what third-party candidates have to do, what they are supposed to do is try to unite based on all the stuff that disaffected people feel. Well, my question is, why is it that disaffected white folk never understand or never feel the need to have any kind of conversation about lineage, to have any kind of conversation about this kind of creation of American racism and what it did to a specific group of people? How come that is never a part of the conversation? Listen, if we have been here 400 plus years and it's never been a central part of the conversation, then the thing that we have to do, that we are called on to do, is to demand it to be part of the conversation. We are not here to be dictated by you. We have fathers. You are Jimmy Dore, white people. You are not our daddies. You do not determine our political way forward. So what happens if you win? What happens if you're a Negro and you win with a raceless campaign? You a Negro or you a black man or whatever, a black woman, and you win on a raceless campaign and you do what it takes to get elected. To form that kind of coalition. Do you know what happens? Barack Obama happens. Barack Obama is the result of forming that kind of coalition in racelessness, where you never mention race as a wink and a nod. We'll take care of you. He can't talk about race because white people don't like it. Let me tell you, that's what you got. You got a bunch of triangulation, and it'll win an election. It will. It'll get him his 5%. It absolutely will. But guess what? It won't help us. Once you start triangulating and say, I'm not going to speak about what ADOS people go through and what they're owed because it makes racists upset, you are never going, that's going to be your way all the way through. 4 years, 8 years, you're never going to change that. And the thing is, white folk, y'all are making solidarity really, really hard because we're not going that way anymore. See, the thing that I want to point out is this class over race. We ain't even got to lineage. One don't fix the other, right? So one of the things I want to kind of point out is that, just in case you don't understand, we've been here before. What Yvette talking about? We've been here before. It's not like when people talk about, let me see if I can find it. When people start having conversations about, oh, we have to just do class because class helps black people too. One of the things they never talk about is history. We all read, and if you haven't read When Affirmative Action Was White, you should pick it up. We read those. I think that was our first book club book. Go read Rothstein's book, The Color of Money. Go read The Color of Wealth. We have done class-based things in this country, and what has always happened, nearly always, is that the class-based thing that we were doing, Negroes got carved out of it. So what happened is they told us, hey, we're going to do something. You're going to be in it. We're going to do the New Deal or whatever. And it's a class-based thing. It's going to uplift you. We are still living the consequences of being excluded from so much of the New Deal. And most of y'all know this. But we're just gonna go back through it because nobody ever, when people bring up, when Jimmy Dore brings up this stuff, nobody ever challenges the fact that we've done class and they have found a way to exclude us from all these class-based policies. The government's efforts were primarily designed to provide, we know about this redlining, housing to white middle class, lower middle class families, he says, African Americans and other, I hate this, other people of color. It was, oh my God. Were left out of the new suburban communities. Now, it's not just that. Let's just read a little bit from a couple of things and we'll get back to it. We built this consequences of the New Deal era intervention in America's racial geography. When Dr. West said, I'm speaking as a black man, that was it. You know, that was it. This idea, let me just come out here for 1 second and say one other thing, because this is on my mind. Let me tell you what's happening. And we're going to go, we've always gotten carved out of it. But here's the thing. Here's the metric, or whatever you want to call it. We're in this place where we as ADOS are only allowed to talk about what white people agree about. So if there is no agreement amongst a good deal of white folk who are disaffected or in the Democratic Party, or ones who may be inclined to come back or who may be inclined to vote green, if there's no agreement amongst white folk, we can't talk about it. It don't matter how our lives look. It don't matter how we've been left alone. It don't matter how homeless we are. What Jimmy Dore is telling you, if white folk don't agree, we can't talk about it. Now, what we're not going to talk about and what we should be talking about is, why don't white folk agree? What is wrong with you with not agreeing that the plunder is over? That we have to repay these people, resources have to go into the community, we have to have a redistribution of wealth. What part of you, white folk, is not okay with justice? What part of you is so immoral that that cannot be a part of the conversation? Because what Democrats did was not redress. It was use identity politics to kind of make us feel elevated, and blacks and people of color, you are the crux, and immigrants built the country. They just they make you feel good with words. That's not real. That's not real. But what part of you thinks it's okay to say, listen, y'all, you can't make this thing that you talking about that's right, that's just. Dr. West is very theological. Y'all know that. He comes from a place of justice. How are you going to tell that man that you can't do that because white people don't agree with it? Instead of calling it to question, why don't white people agree with it? So if we go back to this study that I was just talking about, it says this article's focuses primarily on mortgage lending, but scholars have documented numerous government and industry policies and practices that contributed to residential segregation, exclusionary zoning practices of local municipalities, segregation in public housing, discriminatory homeowners insurance provision, and other manifestations of institutional bias, right, are layered on top of a racial geography heavily shaped by federal involvement in the housing credit market. Recent work has argued that New Deal redlining had a causal effect on neighborhood level racial isolation, but no work thus far has explored the relationship between legacy of mortgage lending policies and subsequent trends in segregation at higher levels of aggregation, for example, between neighborhoods within cities. All that old condescending mess. So let me go to the next one. Because this is just, because I think we've kind of, I think we know about that one, especially when it's original quality parallel. Well, let me just go here. Let me go here really quick. These findings corroborate claims that New Deal housing policies had enormous effects on racial geography in the United States by encouraging segregation through the drawing and grading of neighborhoods. Although it should come as no surprise that government investment of this scale could have a dramatic and lasting effect, no previous work has attempted to measure the consequence of the enduring, ladies and gentlemen, Consequences of this suite of federal policies. The New Deal heavily subsidized segregation of white people and capital from black people, establishing the socio-spatial arrangement of goods and services, jobs, schools, that in the post-war United States ensure geography is destiny. Racialized places provide opportunities for white families' upward mobility and disproportionate immobility of disadvantaged black families. Now, I want to show you something else. All of this, when you talk about FDR, when you talk about all these presidents, when you talk about us being liberal or whatever, I want to just show you how where the black vote has been. Democratic versus GOP. Right? Black vote. That's black vote for president. That's black vote for president. Democrat versus GOP. Now, black party identification. Black party identification. You see how in 1936, 1940, 1944 kind of even and it comes out. We all know this. I did a whole show on how we became Dems. But my thing is, when you have that much black party identification as Democrats, right? And then when you have this much in terms of black vote for president, and you still are stuck to the bottom. You still are stuck to the bottom. You have to decide. At some point, you have to decide, I have to drive this train, this political bus, whatever you want to call it. You have to tell yourself, I have to drive this, because there is no way that we should have numbers that high in terms of supporting Democrats, and we still don't have anything. What is a third party black candidate or ADOS candidate to do if he's not going to include ADOS in it? What's the point of coming out of the Democratic Party if you're not going to do nothing for ADOS? What is the point? Because the whole point of the Democratic Party, we got all those votes over there, and they have not uplifted us at all. This is barely. I'm not saying this is barely, and we tried class. That's the thing. We tried class. We tried. FDR also sold us to the we all know this, that he sold us to the wolves. The racists wanted one thing, you know, the racists, the northern racists wanted one thing. Even in terms of, he could have mandated that all that public, all that stuff, he could have mandated that all that building of homes, not just redlining, all that stuff would have been integrated. He could have remade America. He didn't. So stop talking to me about class. We have had people try to do class, and they find a way to carve us out. They get in those back rooms, and they find a way to make sure that we are not included in the bounty of America. That's what happens every time. To fix race. Well, in this country, it's just ADOS. It used to be black, but everything that's happened now with all the brown, it's just ADOS. You have to fix lineage. You have to fix it. It's not even fixing race. You have to fix lineage in this country, because everything that does not happen in this country, so much of what goes wrong in this country, so much of why we can't do good politics in this country, comes back to the fact that we got a substantial group of white folk that don't like ADOS, and then we got another substantial group that don't even know how America institutionalized racism in this country, and they don't care to know. You gotta fix lineage, or you won't be able to do anything else. Let me just play this clip really quick.
Great. So, which led him to his second hypothesis, which was in his book Race Traits in 1896, which was that if white people who control the politics and most of the economy of the United States simply deny health care to black people, the black race, again his phrase, would die out in 2 or 3 generations. And that would, quote, solve the race problem in America. Frederick Hoffman took this theory, pitched it to Congress, gave lectures all across the United States to state legislatures, met with governors, to physicians groups. He was beloved by those establishments. By the way, he was the co-founder of the American Lung Association. I mean, the guy was no slouch. He was powerful. He was famous, and people took him seriously. Woodrow Wilson, and this is why in 1912, when Teddy Roosevelt proposed a single-payer health care system to cover everybody as part of his square deal plan when he was running for president for re-election, this was why that got shot down because white people, including the medical establishment, white people by and large said, particularly the white racists in the South, said, wait a minute, if you cover everybody with health insurance, you're going to be covering black people too, and we can't have that. So that ended that discussion in 1912. It's also why they came after Franklin Roosevelt in 1936 when he proposed a single-payer system. It's why they came after Harry Truman in 1947 when he proposed a single-payer health care system. But black people, we can't do that. Black people will get that health care. You know, and this is why they came after John Kennedy in 1961 when he proposed a single-payer health care system. And it's why when Lyndon Johnson and Robert Ball were writing the Medicare law in 1965, the Southern racist conservative senators came to them and said, you need to build into this thing a bar high enough that poor black people in the South, and 60% of black people live in the South right now. It was even a higher proportion back then in the 1960s. So the poor black people in the South won't be able to jump over that bar and show up in our all-white hospitals. So they took Medicare Part B, which is the part that pays for hospitalization, and said, we're only going to pay for 80% of the hospitalization. There'll be a 20% gap, which is the gap that you fill in with your Medigap policy now. That gap was to prevent black people from presenting themselves in hospitals unless it was just an absolute screaming life-ending emergency. So from the beginning through the 1960s, the reason why the United States never acknowledged health care as a right rather than a privilege was because of Hoffman's theories and white racism. I mean, they were just like intertwined. And American racism, I don't know how else to say it. And that prevailed right up until the 1980s, that kind of thinking and that kind of opposition to any kind of health care program.
So here's the thing. You're not going to have, every time, we can't have universal health because white people, let me tell you, these people are so awful. Well, what if black people get to go to the, what if the Negroes get to go to the doctor? What if the Negroes get to go to the hospital? Golly, y'all don't want us to have medical care? No, that's why you won't see in the plantation states. Why do you think you don't see them expanding Medicaid coverage? It ain't because oh, with the budget. No. People have a thing for Negroes dying in this country. I swear these racists will cut off their nose to spite their face. As long as I just want to feel like I'm better than them. Will the Negroes get free health care? Because they already feel like the propaganda machine has them feeling like we all living off welfare and running around in the streets with Obama phones with a bag full of money and a gold chain and Jordans and a refrigerator on our back. I tell you no lie. My daddy tells a story all the time about, he said he saw a white guy one day and the black man, there's a black man who was driving down the street in the truck. The white man sees the black man driving down the street in the truck and there's a refrigerator on the back of the truck. And the white man looks at the other white man and say, that nigga got a refrigerator. We got to do something about these niggas. Because he had a refrigerator. Like, just the idea, that's racism kills class. So you cannot do anything about class because what's going to happen is that the same races we talk about, the same races who wouldn't expand Medicaid or whatever into their states are going to be the same races who come in when you try to do some class stuff and say, let's figure out a way, the 20% rule, whatever. And I think this is the book he was talking about. I think this is what I found. But it's going to be, it'll be the same thing. They will come in and find a way to say, like, let's carve out, because it's easy. People always talk about, well, let's just do a bill and do a bill for everybody. There's no bill that's for everybody. Voila. You can always carve out something like that 20%, like you got to go to the hospital and pay 20%. You can always carve out something that makes it difficult for one group of people. You can always do that. And when the people that you're making it difficult for are wealthless, all you got to use is wealth to carve it out. It's so easy. So when you go around and talk about, oh, why can't we just do something? Why can't we just do something class-based? Why can't we just do something? You can't because this idea of race, which is now lineage, because somebody who came over here, whenever, this idea, it is now, they will kill it. They'll kill it. It'll be gone. They will find a way. When a bill, before a bill passes law, you know it has to get passed by the House and the Senate. Then what people don't think about is if it passes those hurdles, because there are a lot of what we like to call veto points. for a bill to become a law. That's why it's so difficult. Because there's a lot of places when I say veto points, there's a lot of places where a bill can die before it becomes law. You already got the House and you already got the Senate, but there are a lot of other places it can die. It can die in committee, it can die subcommittee, it can die a lot of different places. So it's hard for a bill to become a law. But if you get past the hurdle of the House and you get past the hurdle of the Senate and okay, we on our way to the White House, right? Not so fast. That bill goes to the conference committee, and the conference committee makes a lot of changes, and that's where the deals are made. That's where all the deals are cut, and you can't go back in after the fact and say, "Wait a minute, we didn't want that. That's not what we want." No, lobbyists get to go in there who have money and say, and they find the person that they paid, and they say, "Listen, Mr. Senator so-and-so, we pay," or "Listen, Congressman so we pay, you know how much we donate to you every year? Okay, we need this to include this," right? Or Congress people listen to their constituents, and the constituents say, "No, we don't like this," and the blacks, they get too much, and you find a way to cut the Negroes out, and then go back home and campaign on it. But conference committee is where a lot of that stuff happens. So something can look real good when it gets voted out the House, and when it gets voted out the Senate, and when it gets to conference, it gets gutted, or a lot of stuff changes. That's why I'm so gung-ho on the fact that this has to be specific, because I've seen stuff go to conference and get jacked up. Well, that's not what we wanted. That's not what it was. I don't know what I thought it was. Yeah, it went to conference and it came out different. And you didn't have no leverage in conference. You didn't have no leverage in the conference committee. You didn't have no leverage in terms of, that's where the real jockeying takes place. After that stuff, people think the stuff takes when they're in Congress, and it's a lot of stuff that happens, a lot of changes made. But man, once that thing goes to conference, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. All the power players are in the room, and we ain't in there. And so every time there's some kind of class-based thing, just even with this thing, like you can't even force governors to expand it into their state. So people were thinking, oh, it's gonna be universal health care. We all gonna have health care. Don't you need health care too? Don't you need health care too? And then you see Republican governors stymie that. Well, but they was telling us we need health care too, and we're disproportionate in these states. What about us? Well, the governor decided. Why was that in there like that? When y'all told me we was gonna get Obamacare, you told me why you didn't say nothing about all this stuff you're talking about now. Yeah, well, they tell you one thing, they promise you one thing, and it comes out a very different way. That's just what it is. So you craft it. The only way around that is to craft something that's specifically for you. Until you get enough power to where you're in conference, we have to do the specific stuff first to have the power to ever be in conference. Oh my goodness. It's just, they always do that. And let me bring some other stuff up really quick, because that's not it. Let's just bring up some other examples. This is from the National Archives, African Americans and the American labor movement. Okay, and we don't talk enough about A. Philip Randolph, but in 1925, A. Philip Randolph began his 12-year fight to gain recognition of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters by the Pullman Car Company, the American Federation of Labor, and the U.S. government. Randolph ultimately succeeded his quest in 1937, and in the process became a leader in the fight against racism in the workplace and nation. Records of the National Mediation Board and records of the U.S. Railroad Administration document the efforts of the African American railroad workers and their unions to procure satisfactory compensation and secure job security. And so here's something else. So why did he have to do that? I thought we was all laborers and come on. New Dealers sought to institute the collective bargaining process by guaranteeing labor the right to organize and to designate representatives for collective bargaining purposes under the auspices of the National Labor Relations Board. African American leaders were disappointed that the Wagner Act of 1935 did not contain prohibitions against union race discrimination. In 1930, no more than 50,000 out of 1.5 million black workers engaged in transportation, extraction of minerals, or manufacturing were members of any trade union. Furthermore, the AFL remained a conservative organization. A large number of member unions did not permit African Americans to join their ranks, and the AFL leadership showed little apparent interest in organizing black and white laborers laborers, black and white laborers in mass production industries. So you have the labor movement. We're talking about class. We're talking about workers getting together, right? That's what class is. Workers unite and stuff. Like, people on the bottom, come on, let's do it. We have a history of unions being racist and not including ADOS. We just have a history. Listen, that we have a reason not to trust you, Jimmy Dore. And that snark, let me tell you, there's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than a condescending, snarky, snotty little man. Like, the degree to which Dr. Carnell West is esteemed in America, the institutions that he's taught for, and you have this little plump-looking, mediocre white man who comes on and just says, well, you know, I think you're doing it wrong. Well, what have you done in your life, though? Like, I just want to know, like, what have you done in your life to offer that critique? And he kept saying, I don't know who you're talking to. Like, in the interview, he said, I don't know who you're talking to, but they're giving you bad advice. When have you ever, I don't know, somebody give me this man's resume of what campaigns he ran. And then it's so condescending to say, well, you're getting bad advice, as opposed to, I'm running my stuff. I'm doing something based on what I believe in. It's that level of condescension. And it shows. You can be Dr. Carnell West, you just left Harvard, and this little white man with a YouTube show can say whatever and not even speak to the history of the labor movement, the history of white folks in this country, and why we don't trust class, because class has never been about class. Class has also been about race. It's never been about class. They find a way to do it. It's always been about race. Everything is about race in this country. Remember I said this before. Everything is about us. I'm sorry. It just is what it is. It shouldn't be this way, but it is. Protective labor legislation of the 1930s, such as the Social Security Act, the National Labor Relations Act, and the Fair Labor Standards Act, did not extend to agricultural workers. Y'all know, remember we read this. Although 31.8% of the African-American population in 1940 was employed in agriculture. A 1945 Bureau of Labor Statistics survey of American agricultural unionism noted that labor unionism in agriculture has been rather anomalous and transitory of development in the American economy. It has been composed of literally hundreds of organizations that were sporadic, scattered, short-lived. The reasons why most labor unions failed in the 1930s were the same reasons that made them vulnerable to agitation and strikes, their extreme mobility, etc., etc. But let me just say something else. And let me just say, you have to give A. Philip Randolph credit. He did at one point was able to get a multicultural, multiracial union together, right? So you have to give credit where credit is due. But, hold on one second. But remember, we also had after World War I, and he was successful in getting this for a while after World War I. The collapse of cotton prices led to strained landlord-tenant relations as planters sought to shift some losses to tenants by manipulating accounts and, in some cases, outright fraud. A group of African Americans organized the Progressive Farmers and Householders Union to protect themselves against exploitation and advance the intellectual, material, moral, spiritual, and financial interests of the Negro. The Union was destroyed in the Elaine Massacre of 1919 in Phillips County, Arkansas, when white law enforcement officials and vigilantes from neighboring counties and states attacked Union officials and members, killing up to 100 African Americans. So, and A. Philip Randolph did, I think this was he did get something moving, because he was the first March on Washington. That was, I don't know if people know that, but that was the first March on Washington, was with A. Philip Randolph in so it wasn't, Dr. King's wasn't the first. President A. Philip Randolph announced the creation of a March on Washington committee, promising that unless President Roosevelt issued an executive order ending racial discrimination and hiring by unions, the employees, and eliminating segregation in the armed forces, 10,000 Americans would march on Washington demanding the end to segregation. The number of threatened marchers grew from 10,000 to 50,000 and then 100,000. Despite the entreaties of Roosevelt and his intermediaries, Randolph made it clear that nothing less than a president executive order would stop the march. Roosevelt gave in and issued the executive order AA02.29. And it shows you got to get people together. All this stuff, you have to have people. You saw how that happened. The numbers grew and grew and grew. That's how that it didn't happen because I was just talking and I was just no. I'm get 10. I got 50. I got 100. I got 100,000 people. What you gonna do? You gonna barbecue a meal do? And he did get some he got some white folks into the help with the union stuff and some survivors. A. Philip Randolph did and some survivors of the Elaine massacre. But what I'm saying is that the thing that stymies us is that the head of white racism always rears every time. And so every time we take a step forward, we get kicked back. So what happens is, because when you look at the New Deal, it has such lasting, that's what that report just showed, is that it has such lasting ramifications in terms of our wealth, in terms of our zoning, in terms of integration. And it wasn't just redlining. There was all kinds of stuff. And let me show you something else really quickly. I think this report is a little bit shabby. It's a little bit lazy for my I think y'all saw it around, so I'm not going to get into it because I'm not particularly impressed. But there was there were a couple of things that I just wanted to point out based on this study, which is very short to me. But anyway, my standards may not be right, maybe a little bit high. Based on 2019 Federal Reserve data, 96.1 trillion in total U.S. household wealth was distributed very unevenly among 129 million families. The top 10% of households, roughly 12.9 million families, own 76% of all private wealth. The middle 40% own 22% of the wealth, and the bottom 64.3 million combine 1% of the wealth. And we all know what we are on this scale. So we all know what we have and what we don't have, right? So, but there's one part I want to get to, which I find particularly astonishing. Perhaps the most shocking revelation is that black gains in homeownership were more significant prior to the passage of the Fair Housing Act of 1968. The black ownership rate was 22.8% in 1940 and jumped 15.6% percentage points to 38.4% over the next 20 years, but it has ebbed and flowed ever since. The peak for black home ownership was in 2004 at 49.1%, but 15 years later it has sharply declined by 7 percentage points. As a result, the black home ownership rate in 2019, 42.1%, was virtually identical to the rate in 1970, 41.6%. The historical pattern exhibits a lack of home ownership stability. How many times have we talked about stability, family? That we don't have stability, and being wealthless means you don't have stability. You will have a house today, you will have a foreclosure tomorrow. So let's go right back to it. Lack of home ownership stability, since gains can easily be reversed thanks to the booms and busts of the real estate market. It confirms that a market-based strategy is not adequate in reducing home ownership inequality. Sustained government investment is required to increase black home ownership and bridge the current gap. Black home ownership at the end of 2022, 45%, was slightly lower than white home ownership rate in 1940, 45.7%, and black renters continue to outnumber black homeowners. Fam, I really don't know what I really don't know what America is doing. I mean, I don't know what we are doing. The fact that this isn't what we're talking about. I had my take on Deion Sanders, right? In the sense that when you come to Jackson State, just don't promise that you're there for HBCUs. Just say, I want to be here to coach the best school I can coach, right? That's over with. So he's somewhere else now, Colorado. My problem is, in terms of culture, I can see people on Saturday, Sunday sharing, and good for them. I'm happy some HBCU kids I'm good for them. I don't have no animus about that. I just don't like the story that was told and pushed by him and his reality TV girlfriend. But how can this be our reality? And all I see from everybody is stuff that has to do with entertainment. There is, from our community, not enough conversation about this. They're saying that we got the homeownership rate of whites in the 1940s, and ain't nobody talking. Don't nobody want to have that conversation? That's the wildest thing in the world to me. Here's just a little quick chart. Homeownership rates and racial gap over the years 1940 to 1920. That blue line is white. That orange line is black homeownership rate. And that green line is racial gap in homeownership rate. Now let me go to this, because this, ladies and gentlemen, is the kicker for me. Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. The Consumer Survey of Finances provides a different ratio of the black-white wealth divide, but it similarly shows a glacial rate of improvement in black-white wealth inequality. Over the past 4 decades, the racial wealth gap divide has increased in total dollars, according to an analysis from Edward N. Wolf. The racial wealth divide in 1983 between blacks and whites was 100,000, increased to 150,000 in 2000 from 2019. So we're going further and further apart. We're regressing. During the next 40 years, median black wealth was never closer to white wealth than it was in 1983. The country is not on the path to bridge the racial wealth divide. In fact, using Wolf's analysis, the black-white wealth divide has increased. In 1983, black Americans had 7% of the wealth of whites. In 2019, black Americans had slightly lost ground, having only 6% of the wealth of whites. And understand, we don't have disaggregation yet. So we don't know how many of these people are elites and come from other places. We don't know. So the 1860 to 2020 paper cited above is more optimistic on the prospect of closing the racial wealth divide. According to this analysis of 160 years, African Americans in 1962, the year before the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, had 12 cents for every dollar of non-black Americans. In 2019, African Americans had 18 cents for every dollar of wealth of non-black Americans. At this rate, this optimistic analysis estimates it would take 780 years for black wealth to equal non-black wealth. Remember it was 200? Do y'all remember? Wasn't it like, at one point, wasn't it like 200 years or something? Now it was something like it would take 180 or something. What was the number initially? I can't remember. Now it's 780. When you come back next year, they're going to tell you it's 5,000 years. Because listen, white people are taking off. Like, remember what we said when everybody was like, remember when Boyce came out with his dumb self, and he was like, I think we can catch them. Yeah, if they were standing still, fool. They not standing still, they taking off, you dodo bird. They gone. They taking that wealth, and that wealth is accelerating. All these little high yield accounts, it's accelerating. You got that money, you put that money somewhere, make money, your kid ain't got to do nothing. And you sitting there talking, well, I think we can do it. That went from how many years to, what was the years, y'all? That went from how many years to 780 years. It was just something else. It was just something way smaller than that. 780. Hey, tell boys to get y'all to catch up. I'm just saying, people say the dumbest things. Now, all this is going on, and they're going to Earn Your Leisure conferences and watching people drink champagne from the stage. What am I do? You can't. The question always becomes, how do you convince poor people that they poor when they think they rich? It's almost like my people are caught in a delusion. Like they're in some kind of weird wealth kind of trance where the wealth exists in their mind. They just got to pull it out their head. They got to make it real. But it's real to them because they know they can make it real. Like it's like the wealth is not what their bank account or investment accounts reflect. Like, because if you have real wealth and in your bank, you don't just keep that all liquid. Although some people are doing more of that today. So must be something shaky going on. But what are your investment account? Well, I'm on it. I'm working with the Wall Street. I had an ad today come on my Instagram talking about Wall Street Trapper. What kind of algorithm am I on? I guess it was because I went to that Earn Your Leisure, looked at all those Earn Your Leisures where they had people doing all kind of stuff and people just on the stage telling fun stories. It was 20,000 of us. First of all, I don't know if it was 20,000 of y'all. Second of all, let me just say this. Since I'm on this, when you're doing a wealth conference like that, or an investment conference, you don't want 20,000 people. 20,000 people, and I said this, I might have said this last time, but 20,000 people is great concert numbers. Like, if you are a star and you want to do a concert, that's a great number. If you're trying to service people, that's an awful number because it means that you all can have breakout sessions. Nobody can have any one-on-one help, any answer any one-on-one questions. It means you're showing up to a show, which is what it was. But y'all will show up for that, and nobody will even talk about this. And it's not even real. And it kind of just makes me wonder, is it going to be real when y'all are homeless? I mean, do the people in your family or the people in our families have to be homeless before they realize, oh, this junk wasn't real. And different kinds of poverty. Let me read this last little bit real quick. Not only is the nation's black-white wealth divide on a steady path of maintaining economic apartheid, but the low level of black wealth is keeping most African Americans in asset poverty. So people love to talk about income, asset poverty. Wolf estimates the median financial resources of African Americans to be at $400 compared to in 2019 compared to $47,800 for white Americans. Median financial resources are an estimate of the wealth accessible to a household that does not require one to pull value out of an owned home or asset. This $400 median means that most African Americans have to go into debt to cover unexpected expense of $500 or more. So you telling me we don't have $500, but we in a conference where people paying $1,000, $2,000 to watch people pop champagne and watch Ja Rule run across the stage? And y'all telling me we gonna get the bag? We got the bag? All right. Though African Americans have shown significant progress in getting out of income poverty, means you can get a job. We can't even really do that no more. Because I don't agree with this. Because with the gig economy, I don't think those are jobs. I think the gig economy is masking what jobs used to be. But let's continue. To understand the real cost of racial discrimination in wealth building, the Brookings Institution looked at the share of national wealth that would be owned by black households if they held a share in proportion to their proportion of the population. Instead of a total wealth of $2.5 trillion, total black wealth should be closer to $12.68 trillion, representing a gap of $10.14 trillion. That's a low estimate to me, but I ain't going to talk about it. I ain't going to talk about it. So you might as well say we have nothing. Everybody's popping champagne. Everybody's getting the bag. Everybody's faking. Everybody's fronting. Everybody's in a trance. Ain't nobody you know got nothing. Don't take my word for it. Just watch them. Just watch them. Just watch them. Just watch. Ain't nobody you know got nothing. I know a couple of aberrations out of every. Ain't nobody you know got nothing. I mean, pay close attention. Go out to eat. Watch people you with. Check their account. Why you? Okay, I just gotta go on my phone for a minute. I know, me too. Listen, it's delusional. But what it shows when we go back to the Jimmy Dore Carnell West thing, what our predicament shows is that we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice but to center ourselves. It's not like we're all the poor, the same kind of poor. That white folks are the same kind of poor as we are. And so we the same kind of poor. We got the same wealth level. It ain't what it should be. And we all trying to get to the top. No. Black poverty, when we talk about black, we're talking about ADOS. Our poverty is very different from white poverty. It's a very different poverty. It's worse. It's more concentrated. It's asset deficient. That means we have to do something specific to us, especially because it's not just like we just all went on a gambling spree and we lost. We got our reparation. We lost everything. That's not what happened. So we have to make a demand of the government that is specific to us. That's the reason for it, Jimmy Dore. And politics be damned. If it don't work, and if y'all still don't want to go, I'm not supporting nobody who's just doing no class stuff no more. I'm sorry. If you don't have some specific stuff in there for me, numbering in the trillions of dollars, I can't help you. I can't help you get elected. I can't encourage nobody else to help you get elected. And listen, and I'm the kind of person, I'm not somebody who, we just not gonna vote. I will always. We probably won't have another conference until like October. Maybe. I don't know. We still working through some stuff. We got to figure it out. But because we're doing so much stuff right now. So we got to figure out what the date looks like. But the last time we invited all the candidates, right? We will invite you to come and we want to help you help us. We are not just some lazy folks who just go, I ain't going to do nothing. No, that's laziness. Call them to come out. Come outside. I'm outside. Come outside. That's what he wants you to do. So come outside. We want to show, listen to me. We want to show you, but listen, you can't be Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore, he's no good for y'all. I know y'all think y'all cocky, and I know y'all think that no matter what, that Negroes is always gonna be. We're not doing that. The tide is changing. And I'm very thankful to y'all. I'm very thankful to what we're doing. We have changed the whole, people don't want to mention us, fine. But we have changed the whole tide in terms of how people understand, the people who are political, in terms of how they understand politics and what we're willing to do. How long are we going to, like, if you talk about, let's go back to this right as we end. If you talk about vote blue no matter who, and you talk about party affiliation, if you talk about black vote for president, how long do people expect us to do this and not get enough to have an American life in this country? How long are we supposed to do this blue no matter who? Listen, somebody tell you blue no matter who, show them this chart. Tell them we've been for president, we've been blue no matter who this long, and we still stuck to the bottom 780 years away or whatever it is. That, no, ain't nobody doing that no more. Ain't nobody doing that no more. We finished. We finished with that. It is what it is. Jimmy Dore can be mad. His mama can be mad. His papa can be mad. Bernie can be mad. Who cares?